What the Tech is sponsored by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create a professional website or online portfolio. For a free trial and 20% off, go to squarespace.com and use offer code WhatTheTech9. Shutterstock.com. With over 28 million high-quality stock photos, illustrations, vectors, and video clips. For 25% off your new account, go to Shutterstock.com and use offer code WhatTheTech9.
What the Tech?
Hey everybody, welcome to What the Tech. I'm Andrew Zarin. Of course, I'm joined by Paul Thurrott, as I am each and every week. How you doing, Paul?
Hey, pretty good.
Very excited, obviously, about the iPhone announcement.
I don't know why I was surprised you addressed me. Andrew, how long have you been there?
Not long. Not long.
What's going on?
The iPhone announcement, obviously, was today. We're going to be talking about that. We also have Surface 2 stuff to talk about. We have a lot to get to. But before I do, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. You can go to gfqlive.tv, enter our chat room if you're watching live on any number of our sites. We're on Ustream, we're on Daily Motion now, live. We're everywhere. Live streaming is available, so you can go to our website.
You're like a virus.
I know. I spread, and then I just don't leave. I'm like mono. Everybody's a 14-year-old boy, and I'm mono. I just don't leave. Creeps up after 5 years.
I think I have mono.
Ugh, awful. I got it from drinking someone's Snapple in 7th grade. It's the worst experience ever. Of course, you can go to chat room at gfqlive.tv. Also, if you want to help the GFQ network out, we have an Amazon link. Amazon affiliate link. You click on it at gfqlive.tv, or you could go to gfq.co/Amazon, and we get a little credit every time you buy something on Amazon, so it's a big help for us. With that said, we'll go head first into the iPhone announcement. Paul, I know you're very excited about this. The 5S and the 5C were unveiled. 5S is a 64-bit processor inside. The A7 is a 64-bit processor. iOS 7 is running 64-bit. Sure. You got a better camera. You got a little upgrade here and there. Better video. Better processor. What do you think of it?
Well, I don't think much of it personally, but I as I do at these events, I kind of riffed on it a bit on Twitter today. But I think I'll disappoint a few people by just saying, honestly, I think Apple released what they had to release, and I have a theory about the pricing and about how their markets work and how they see the world and all that kind of thing. But 2 days ago they were selling one product that was 2 years old and one product that was 3 years old, and today they have two new products. So. I think this is a positive development. For me personally, I would prefer devices that were hit closer to like a 4:3 aspect ratio. I think these things are too weird and tall and thin. I don't like them personally, but I think given where they are in the world, which is in a very good place, I think they did the right thing.
I'm going to get to the 5C, but the 5S, this is, again, it's the weird in-between year. I was not expecting anything gigantic. This is the first year I did the Apple coverage.
I don't mean gigantic. I just want to be clear about that. So I think that the current iPod Touch, the 5th gen, and the iPhone 5 are, this is the one where they added a row. So all they did was make it taller.
Yeah.
I think it creates a device that is awkward to hold.
I think so.
I think that this thing is the width of it is too little, if that makes sense. I'm not saying Apple should have come up with a phablet. I'm saying that
thinner bezel.
No, I'm saying that it should be a little more wide from side to side. It's, instead of just adding a row, they should have added a column.
No, that's what I'm saying. What you would do is you thin the bezel out and you go out sideways. Take a half an inch on each side. You go up,
Okay, I don't think the bezels are huge on these things, and certainly on the iPod Touch I'm looking at now, the bezel is very small on the sides. But I see what you're saying. Off the top, you could take it off the top. Okay, actually, yes, that would be nice too. But I guess they need room for those electronics, right? The camera, it has to have a certain thickness and has to be above the screen for that reason. The microphone, the headphone or whatever. Yeah, okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's true. They could lose some space there, but I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm used to bigger phones, but I find this thing curiously hard to hold because it's so thin from side to side. And I don't know why they've settled on this shape, and then they've gone completely 4x3 on the tablets. Like I actually think there's kind of a happy middle ground between the aspect ratios of both devices that makes sense for both that they're not hitting on. I don't know, whatever. That doesn't really matter. This is what they're doing, but
but it's kind of the weird part about this entire thing was every year I'll get, in the chat room, I'll get, where's this feature, or like unheard, like things that like is not going to be there, but people are like, where's the where's the laser,
NFC?
where's NFC, where's the projection,
where's QI wireless charging,
or like even like where's the larger screen, where's the thinner model, where's the
no, right. By the way, yep, and they never do that stuff.
And here's the thing, I did not get it this year. In the chat, like people didn't come in and say, I thought it was going to be a thinner phone. I thought it was going to be a larger screen.
I think we're getting used to how Apple operates, right?
Yeah.
I mean, look, for the flagship phone, it makes sense that you would use exactly the same casing. I mean, Apple has a history of reusing their designs. In the case of the iPhone, in an S phone, right? They've done it before with the 3GS, with the 4S, and now with the 5S, right? So there's an investment you make in this kind of form factor. And of course, there's a whole corresponding ecosystem of devices and accessories that work with that exact size device. So there's rationale for keeping it around for two product cycles. That's fine. I get that. It's okay. But what Apple does is the unexpected, right? So people have been asking for wireless charging. Actually, Apple people don't ask for everything. They're happy with whatever you give them. But I think looking at it from the outside, I would say, why wouldn't Apple have wireless charging, right? Even if they went on their own non-standard air, they could call it air charge or something. Why don't they have wireless charging? Why don't they have the tap to share NFC stuff, which is going to become very important for mobile payments going forward? Why wouldn't they do that? But then they come out with this way to log in with your thumb, right? Which is a nicety. It's sort of like remote start in a car.
Yeah, but do you think this is Apple's
feature.
way of kind of like saying like, oh, I guess everybody likes the gimmicks, so we're going to add this now?
Well, I mean, I don't think there are a lot of gimmicks to an iPhone. I mean, I just think this is one.
No. Like, but they're following like the Samsung model, where like Samsung, when they did that like S4 announcement, they were talking about like crazy features and eye focus and insanity.
Well, they don't do that.
They don't do that. But this is, I guess, like the first thing. Well, they're all.
No, iPhone is Apple is all about restraint. If Apple doesn't do what some people may want. Apple does what it thinks is best from sort of a quality and a design perspective. And I know we're on the iPhone 5S, but if you think about something like the iPhone 5C, where you have color cases, the way that other manufacturers, notably Nokia, handle that is that case comes off and you can replace it with another case. So you may buy a blue device of whatever kind, like a Lumia 520, but you could turn it into a red, a yellow, a white, a black, whatever colors they may have, just by popping off the back. Apple's not going to let you pop off the back. As useful as that functionality may be, right? And by the way, there's some kind of reliability aspect to that as well. If anyone has a phone where, you drop it on the floor or on the stairs or whatever, and it bounces and it comes apart and the battery pops out and the back pops off, those phones tend not to actually break that much. They come apart, but then you can pop them back together and everything's fine. When everything is unified together, the impact has to be met by the entire device, and that results in cracked screens often. But that's the way they do things. I mean, they don't look at it necessarily logically. They look at it kind of more emotionally. People expect a certain level of quality. Yeah. It's like the Aston Martin of cars. It's not a Honda.
The color stuff was really funny because they showed like all the different colors, and then they showed a different color case on the color.
Yeah.
So it was almost like this weird, like I was saying, like if you could put a color case on this, then like what's the point of having a colored phone?
Well, okay. So by the way, that's another thing that Nokia does better. Although to be fair, they only do this on certain devices. And so, for example, if you get a Lumia 620, they have this notion of a double shot case, And so if you could imagine like a blue iPhone 5C and maybe you pop on a red case, it would give you that double ring of color, and the effect would be purple,
Okay.
right? It's kind of a neat effect. I think they only do it on that one device. They also give you the option to do things like put wireless charging cases on top of cases, and you can mix and match the colors there. They don't do the weird thing with the circles where you can kind of see through it. But
that was bizarre.
well, this is Apple. I think Apple was right to go color. And
No, I kind of understand why they had to do it. But to me, like the focus of this event was not the 5S. It was the 5C.
Right.
I mean, that was the biggest device there. Forget about the 5S.
I think so, too.
It was all about the 5C. The fact that this is the same specs as the 5.
But here's why. But here's why. So Apple last year came out with an iPhone 5. It had whatever specs it has. And if I'm not mistaken, and again, I was nodding off during this thing, but if I'm not mistaken, the iPhone 5C is basically an iPhone 5 internally, right?
Yeah.
Same components?
Same everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
bigger battery, battery.
I think that's fine. I think that is absolutely okay because if there's one thing no one ever said about the iPhone 5, including last week, was that this thing was too slow, that it wasn't good for certain, it's a high quality device. It still is. And so basing a new lower end model on that, giving people the color options, which again, and I mean this honestly, people think I'm being sarcastic, but I think the color stuff is going to fly with important constituencies, including international markets, which I have a theory about, especially Japan, China, the Middle East, the Far East. And I also think with younger people, not just children, but I mean just younger people, where that kind of fashion sense, and it's not, the iPhone 5 is sophisticated, the iPhone 5S. The iPhone 5C is, playful.
Yeah.
Right?
And they need that. This is their way of competing with Android. And I said this during the entire thing. The biggest uphill battle Apple has is the market saturation with a new Android phone every week. Every single week there's a new Android phone, and they vary from virtually they'll pay you to take the phone to about $300. So how do you compete when someone walks in?
There are three important aspects to this discussion. One is that overall, yes, Android is kicking the crap out of Apple. Will continue to do so. Apple historically gets that 1 quarter bump off of a new product announcement. And so this quarter, they're going to go gangbusters. There will be stories about how Apple has regained share on Android and all that kind of stuff. That's just temporary. It happens. It's been happening 3 years in a row. But then there's these markets that are really important. And two of them are the two biggest phone markets in the world, China and the United States. The United States, Apple is doing unbelievably well. We can't explain it. For some reason, the United States alone in all the world, people are buying a huge proportion of iPhones to the overall market of smartphones.
Well, do you think that's marketing?
That's
That's overall marketing.
It's their home market. I get it, but I'm just saying it. That's okay because I should say this is more than okay. That's incredible for Apple because the United States is currently number 1 or 2 wherever it's going to be number 2 by the end of the year. But it's a huge market, and so it's a rich market too, right? Very so iPhone 5S is going to be a big deal this year in the United States, I bet. But for China is a place where Apple is not doing well. In fact, they're doing much worse in China than they are, on average around the world. So is Windows Phone, by the way. So it's not like anyone else is taking advantage of that except for Android. And so I think the iPhone 5C and the iPhone 5S are both custom, just like laser tailored to the Chinese market. It's really interesting. I get a sense that the people who have money there like the bling type stuff and are going to gravitate to these champagne gold covered, iPhone S's with, the fingerprint reader and all that kind of stuff. All right, neat. But the iPhone 5C, I have a theory, and we'll find out tomorrow because they're going to have a separate presentation in China tomorrow, right? So I think they're going to launch that one in China as a low-cost, no-contract phone. So here, if you were to go to Apple's site today and try to see what it was going to look like, a base-level iPhone 5C off contract is astonishingly expensive. It's $550.
Which one is this? The 5S?
5C.
5C. Yeah.
$550.
See, now
that's not going to fly. That price is not going to fly in other markets. And so my theory is they will ship a version of this specifically for China where the entry-level price will be much lower than that. And it will be basically China, China only or whatever. It will be like a Chinese version of the phone.
And what are they going to do?
And I
Are they
think
going to take the specs out of the, are they going to dumb it down or?
This is just no. I think they're just going to put Chinese language on it, and that's it.
Yeah. See, I had initially thought the purpose of this device to me would have been like the when you look at the specs between the 5C and the 5S, it's not that much. I mean, it's pretty much the same exact thing. You're not getting this gigantic user difference, user performance, performance difference, whatever. You're not getting that. I actually thought what they would do initially, they would say, okay, well, you know what? This is the premier phone. This is the iPhone 5S. You get all this. You make it a little bit worse, but you take the unsubsidized price and you drop it tremendously. $299 would have been a great way to get into this phone, unsubsidized.
Oh my god! Oh, that would have been no-brainer territory.
I mean, they would have killed Android.
And by the way, that's what everyone expected. You can get a Lumia 520 right now for $100 or $129. If you could have paid twice that or a little bit more and gotten a base level iPhone 5, they would have sold millions instantly. But I think the problem with that is it would have undercut the other ones too much because, as you note, the difference between an iPhone 5C and an iPhone 5S real world, from performance usage perspective, is not big.
It's not much, but you know what it also does? That in between year before your contract upgrade, it would fill that gap.
Yep.
Like now, rather than selling an iPhone once every 2 years to someone, you're selling one every year because you know what? If it was $299, I would have probably bought one right now. My contract is up. I wouldn't have gotten a contract one. I wouldn't have signed one. I would have still gotten my contract phone, but I would have gotten that also.
Okay, so I agree with you, but I think that the reality is they did what they did, and I think this is going to work out for them. I think they did what they needed to do.
Well, do you think there's a problem with this the pricing of these phones in this country? Because if you look at it, Google,
yes,
I think Google's selling unsubsidized $299 on their website for the Nexus 4. It's like $299 or $199, whatever it is. I can't remember. Regardless of it being $299 unsubsidized, that is a phenomenal price for a phone.
With C. Ballmer leaving Microsoft, one of his most infamous quotes has been pushed around, far too many times that. He said that the iPhone was too expensive and that they would never sell at this price point, which, by the way, he was right because that first summer, remember, it was selling for, I don't know what the price was, $599, $699. They lowered the price dramatically. It has since settled into a normal schedule. A brand new iPhone, which typically would be like the high-end device, starts at $199 and goes up from there. That's the right price. They got it right. Everything's fine. This phone costs $550.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's how you know that the market for cell phones is just broken in this country. Like, it is so artificial. It's just designed so that we go on to these 2-year contracts and pay and pay and pay, and then you would be silly not to get another phone because you're still paying extra every month because it's built into your contract. It's crazy.
I mean, really what proves what a scam it is, it's tablets with 4G access, Because when you go and you buy a 4G phone, you're not getting it 4G tablet, you're not getting it unsubsidized. You can't go into Verizon and say, okay, I want an iPad LTE and get it for like $200 less than the sticker price. That doesn't exist.
Right.
It's an artificial pricing that they've set up, and you know what? We're used to it and we do it. It's amazing to me. I have a lot more to say about this Apple stuff. I also want to get your opinion on why we didn't get all the other Apple stuff that we've been waiting for. Like, I don't know, maybe a price on a Mac Pro?
A price?
Yeah.
Oh, on the Mac.
Yeah, we don't know what the price is.
Sure. Yeah, you're right. Yep.
We don't.
It's going to be a lot. It's going to be a big number.
Yeah,
I can tell you that.
Well, we'll play the game and we'll guess prices. And I want to maybe the chat could get in and guess a price on this thing. And I don't want to see a 5-digit number.
Oh,
$11,242.
You will be able to spend that much money on one of those.
I'm curious if you can.
I have no doubt.
Yeah, that's interesting. Can you? I don't know.
Yep.
But before we go on, I want to thank our sponsor, and that is Squarespace, the all-in-one website. We can create a high-quality blog, website, portfolio, and e-commerce, which is great. You can create a store. And one of my friends, actually, he's making a website right now. He does website work. He's creating it on WordPress. And I'm like, you know what? The e-commerce stuff is such a disaster on every other platform. Why don't you just do it on Squarespace? It's so easy. They handle everything. It makes it totally easy for you. Really great. The other thing that's great about Squarespace is that when they're creating the templates for the website, they also, not only do they do a lot of, beautiful coding and templates, they also do a lot of work on the back end. So you are almost 100% sure that you're going to get crawled properly on Google, Bing, and all the other services. They also do the hosting for you. They do the domain for you. They do all that stuff for you. And also they have a 24/7 support team. So if anything happens, like your website goes down at 4 o'clock in the morning, you can pick up the phone and call. And it starts at just $8 a month. That includes a domain name also if you sign up for a year. Phenomenal pricing by them, and it's a great service. And they're here in New York too, so I support them. And here's a great deal actually, new deal for you guys. You get 20% off on a new account by going to squarespace.com and using offer code WhatTheTech8. WhatTheTech9. I'm reading 9 and I'm saying 8 again. You get 20% off by going to squarespace.com and using offer code WhatTheTech9, and you get a free trial prior to that. So you can try it out before you buy it, which is excellent. Squarespace.com, I want to thank you guys for supporting What the Tech. Paul, let's talk about the things that were not unveiled.
Okay.
iPad.
Yep. iPad Mini.
New MacBook
Apple TV.
Haswells. New Apple TV.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
So you're saying, in other words, the MacBook Air was updated for Haswell, but the MacBook Pro was not?
MacBook Pro was not.
I see.
MacBook Pro is not a Haswell.
I know so little about that stuff. Okay.
I'm trying to get Mary Jo to get it. I'm trying to get Mary Jo to buy a MacBook Pro.
She would not be happy like that.
You know what? Couple beers in, she was agreeing. She was really happy to talk about the Mac.
Wow.
See what happens? I'm surprised that we didn't get some of these. And you know what? They didn't talk about OS 10.
Okay, so they left it at being an iPhone event, right? I think that's okay.
Are they? Well, last year they kind of did something weird too. Do you remember they had 2 events like back to back?
Yeah, well, so in the past, what they used to always do was first they would have an iPod event. They would do that in September, right? And then they would do the iPhone, and I think sometimes they would merge the iPad event with the iPhone. They would just do that together, but it's okay. I mean, I think having a separate event for the other devices is a good idea. I think spreading it out makes a lot of sense. I think it's fine. This allows them to have the ongoing good news where people stand in line in front of an Apple store on multiple days, throughout the fall. And then it kind of looks like
everybody wants it.
It's just like back-to-back success.
But they're going to have an uphill battle this holiday season because there's a lot of stuff coming out. I mean, it's not the same forget about the Surface 2, which we'll talk about, but they are also competing with the PlayStation. They're competing with the Xbox. They're competing with laptop sales. I mean, there's a lot of competition for this holiday season, and I found it interesting that they're waiting to release this. We also got no update on OS 10, which should have been released a while ago.
Right.
I don't know. It was to me, they had to have known that there wasn't too much going on this time around with these devices. I thought at the end they would add something to kind of fill it.
But I think it's smart for them not to water down the event too much by having other stuff. If they had announced OS 10, new MacBook Pros, new iPad, that would have taken away from the thing that I think right now is their central product, which is the iPhone. I mean, I think it's they could lump everything else together in a way, but I think the iPhone is the most. I think that's the core. I think that's where everything comes out of. It's sort of like their Windows.
It is like their Windows, and it's insane
in the sense that all of their other successes kind of feed off of that.
There's a lot of weird things that they're doing. Like I was surprised that OS 10 didn't come out in the summer. Yeah, normally that's a July thing, and then I was surprised it didn't.
And not to be a jerk about it, but that one just doesn't seem like a huge deal anyway. I mean, whatever, And maybe they'll tie that to the release of those MacBook Pros and also the new Mac Pro.
Ooh, they're selling a new dock on their website for $30
for
the iPhone.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So the next generation iPhone, do you think they're going to go with a bigger screen? Like, what do you think they'll do with this one?
Well, I think that's the logical way they can expand the product line next time, right? Is have a bigger device. And maybe it is that 4x3 thing I'm talking about. Maybe that's how they make it bigger. I hope they don't just make it taller. Again, like we added another row. I hope that's not what it is.
Yeah.
But, there have been stories lately about how they're testing that design, bigger phone designs. And I think there's a market for it. I saw a figure about phablet sales, and I'm not going to remember it off the top of my head, but, the sales of phablets have grown faster than any other of these types of devices, faster than tablets, faster than smartphones overall. Like phablet sales have exploded over the past year. So there would be Apple doesn't miss opportunities like that. Even if they have to go late like they did with the iPad mini, they won't let that one sit.
Yeah. All right. Time to talk about something else.
Mm-hmm.
Enough of this Apple nonsense. Surface 2 announcement.
Yeah.
September 23rd here in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
You will be attending.
Yep.
I'll be trying to break in. I was told they're fully booked. There's no room. If there is any room, they'll let me know. But I'll show up and I'll stalk you guys. I'll be like a groupie.
Okay.
There was a list, I believe you put on Win Super site of the changes.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to go through that? Some of the changes.
Sure.
Talk about. I'm curious about this device because it's coming at a weird time, and I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think the big thing overall is that when you look at the next generation Surface devices, because there's also a Surface Pro too, right? From a form factor perspective, they are basically identical to their predecessors, just like the iPhone 5S is identical to the iPhone 5, right? It's they're reusing that investment in the form factor R&D and all that kind of stuff. Surface 2, which is the next Surface RT, has some basic, as expected type updates, a full HD screen instead of a 1366 screen, next gen Tegra processor, which is a Tegra 4, rather than I think the other one was a Qualcomm processor. Roughly the same battery life. There's some other small changes around capabilities, USB 3 instead of USB 2, which is nice. But basically the same.
Yeah.
Basically the same.
How's the battery life? Because it says up to 8 hours, but
yeah.
Did they improve that at all?
I think that's what they were claiming for the first one. It should be about the same as the first RT, I would imagine. Battery life has never been the problem. In fact, battery life is one of the few really, truly good things about the original Surface RT. The issue there has always been the performance and the compatibility. And the performance, I guess we'll have to wait and see. I mean, over the past year, the Metro ecosystem, as I call it, hasn't grown as fast and gotten as big as I had hoped it would, but obviously it is improving. And so the value prop is a little different. And then the other big question is going to be the price, which I know nothing about. And I think that's by design because I think Microsoft holds on to that until the last minute so they can price it accordingly based on what other players are doing in the market.
But I mean, there's really nobody else doing what they're doing with this device.
Well, except that they have to base the price on what the Android world looks like, what Apple, iPads look like, that kind of thing.
Do you think they're going to undercut what it was last year?
I think that if they do not bring this device in at the current price of Surface RT, which is starting at $349, that this product is DOA.
Yeah, you know why? Well, you probably know why, but I'm thinking out loud because they have all these ads. You do know why? They have all these ads right now saying it's $349.
Right. People,
there's going to be
go back to $500.
They can't go back to $500 after putting out a campaign talking about how awful the iPad is at $499 and they're $349 and you could do all this. It's Windows.
So there's just one problem. Microsoft wrote off nearly $1 billion this year related to this price cut. What that tells me is that the actual cost of these devices is a lot closer to $500 to them than it is to $349. And so if they do enter the market at $349, they're going to be losing money on every single one of these. And that obviously is not kind of a tenable strategy either. So,
but why are they losing money? Like, why is it that Apple could price their iPad at $499 or $399?
Well, but they can't. Well, but you see, Apple prices theirs at the same. It's not like Apple is pricing theirs at less. I mean, I don't know. I don't know why. I mean, Microsoft is to manufacturing. I don't know.
Are they saying, well, because our ecosystem is so large, we could kind of make a far less amount on this device, but we'll make it up in the long run with the apps because everybody's downloading hundreds of apps a year.
Sure. That would be a good strategy. I hope they do it.
I mean, Microsoft strategy, if they did that, that would be great. They could put the emphasis on developers. They give them a little bit more of a cut with the money. They push it. They make sure every major app is on there, and they start making their money from the apps. Right now, I mean, they're probably not making much with the ecosystem. Well, Xbox Music. I mean, I wonder how they're doing with that.
I don't think they're doing great with it,
Yeah.
but I mean, to be honest, this happens a lot in the Microsoft side. Unfortunately, Xbox Music is actually a really good service. It certainly has. There are things they could improve. It doesn't do the type of album or song matching that some of the other services do. Meaning that if the music is not in Microsoft's collection, you won't see it appear in your cloud collection. They need to add that capability, but they've pushed it out to iOS and Android in very basic ways this week. It works across Windows devices. I think I like it. I mean, by the way, tonight, I mean, I'm speaking at an event in town about this kind of topic, which I think of as transitions. And I think part of the thing that's holding up Xbox Music, and by the way, is holding up Microsoft in general, is that a lot of their audience is still rooted in the old school way of doing things. They want to, when they think of a device, they think, well, I'm managing this thing with a very rich application. All my music is there. It's on my PC. And if I want to get it on my phone or my music device, I plug that thing in. I sync it over, and that's how that works. And
but are you
Microsoft
talking about
is moving
Windows?
to this cloud model.
Are you talking about Windows, or are you talking about the PC in general?
I'm talking about just everything in general. I mean, I'm talking about devices in general. The old school way of doing this, which is the model iTunes actually still uses if you want it to. It's the model that Zune used. It's the model that Windows Media Player used before that, was that you would put all of your stuff on your PC.
And then you got to take it off and you transfer it, yeah. What I don't understand is that they have these great services that they've not been able to capitalize on, like Xbox Music. Xbox Music is great.
Yeah, I think it's great.
They just have not. It has not gotten any steam.
No, but see, here's the thing, and this is the problem. I think when people look at something like an iPad instead of a Windows device, and it's different, and it's okay that it's different because it's like an Apple thing, and it's not Microsoft. They don't expect it to have a start button, or they don't expect it to look like Windows, and so they make that transition. It's okay. Windows has got a different problem, and because they expect it to be like Windows, and like I said, a lot of the users who are on there, like people who run out and buy iPhones and iPads and Android devices, they're living this new age lifestyle now. Like, this is all cloud stuff. This is a different way of doing things. And you expect that because it's a different kind of device. But on the Windows side, they're kind of constrained, and it's tough because I always hear from people who say, oh, I still like Zune better. I like this better. It doesn't do this. It doesn't, I have this music that it doesn't sync up, and blah, 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 And it's like complaint after complaint after complaint. And I think that with the cloud, my general advice to people is you need to learn to let go, It's the difference between I have to have an exact playlist that I crafted by hand on my PC and I carefully synced to my device, and I go to my car or I go out on a jog and I listen to the exact music that I wanted, or I go to Pandora, right? Those two things are actually, even though they're both music services, they're really different ways of doing things.
I'm trying to think of, like, for the iPhone, their angle was that all your stuff on the iPad, like your phone and your iPod, are the same thing. So now we have the iPad. Like, Microsoft does not have that advantage. They don't have that advantage saying, like, well, look, you were using this device before. Now you could just combine your phone into it. Like, it's not like Zune was out and they put out a phone to, like, oh, look, it's combined into one. Like, they don't have that advantage that the iPhone had. I'm just curious on what would sell. I mean, Windows Phone, forget about it, because I think Windows Phone is phenomenal, and I think with enough growth and enough, I'm seeing more and more people have a Windows Phone, which is bizarre to me. Like,
sure.
More and more people I run into are using a Windows Phone, and I'm awed. I'm like, wow, you got a Windows Phone, and like they're surprised that I know what it is. I think once they saturate like the everyday person going and buying a Windows Phone, like those $99 Windows phones that are coming out, I think that's great. But when it comes to the Surface, when it comes to their tablets, how are they going to saturate this market even at $399, $499, like how are they going to do it? What is going to be the selling point? Obviously, it's not going to be the OEMs because they've totally dropped the ball and they're giving up on RT. Right. What will make someone go into a store and buy the Surface?
So, I can't fix all of Microsoft's problems, but I can identify some.
You could try.
I can try, but I'll do poorly at that. I can at least identify some issues. Surface RT, Windows RT in general, and Surface RT specifically, clearly is heading down some path to where it's more of a consumption device. It's a tablet. Right. That means you can do email and you can do basic editing someday with Metro Office, and you can do basic photo editing with Photoshop Express. But you're not going to run iTunes on it. You're not going to run Photoshop, Real Office. Well, actually, you are going to run Real Office, and that's what's stupid about it. The problem was they had to put Office on it from the get-go because there was no value proposition for it, and it really mixed the message about what this device was for. And by providing one set of Windows desktop apps that ran on this thing exclusively, I think they really screwed up the messaging. This thing should have been tailored to devices that are like just now coming to market. 8-inch mini tablets, consumption devices. I'm going to watch a movie on a plane. I'm going to listen to music, whatever it is, that kind of thing. And that the productivity stuff should have stayed on the PC side. And unfortunately, because they've done that, I feel like now they're constrained to keep doing that. And I don't know, maybe Metro Office comes out and they finally get rid of, Office RT. I don't know what they're going to do. But I just feel like Windows 8 and Windows RT came out 1 year too early. They're now at the point with 8.1 where they have a version of RT that kind of makes more sense. You can do a lot more stuff, almost everything you need to do, without ever having to go to the desktop. And that product would have made a lot more sense. And that the next version, if they ever get to a V9 or whatever they do, and can get rid of the desktop on the RT side at least, that product starts to make lots of sense.
But looking at it now, year after the fact, do you think it should have still been called Windows on the Surface? RT version should have been Windows, or do you think it would have made a little bit more sense to kind of call it, let's say, Microsoft Surface, and it's a Surface operating system, and this is the tablet?
Well, so why didn't they do that, right? Because if Microsoft had released that as a separate system, no one would have bought it. It would have been even worse than it was. By attaching that stuff to Windows, they have a built-in market that they can get this out to. People can get familiar with it, and even if they don't like it or don't use it a lot on their traditional PCs, when it comes time to buy a market, like a tablet rather, they look at that market instead of maybe at an iPad or an Android device because they're familiar with it. Now,
the reason why I think that is because we had this discussion the last 2 weeks, and it was a great question you brought up. Why is it that people pick up an iPad and they automatically kind of start getting it, and they don't say like, well, where's the start button and where's the exit? Where's the X on top? Where's the minimize key? They don't have that because they are already conditioned going into it. This isn't Windows or this isn't OS 10. With the Surface, you're being told that it's Windows, so you're automatically going in there and you're going to start picking it apart because, well, it's not Windows.
No, that's right. By the way, that's right. Yep. Yeah, if you use a Mac and you hit the minimize button and it doesn't do what you expect, it's a Mac. Things are different.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So when you go to Windows 8 and things don't work the way you expect, it's like, wait a minute, this is Windows. What's going on here? I understand why Microsoft did what it did, but the problem, and it's sort of a hubris thing, is that they were too hardline about it. This company that has always cared so much about backwards compatibility, for the first time, didn't provide at least even hidden access to the legacy UIs that they were getting rid of. When they went to the big new start menu type in Windows XP, you could optionally go back to the old Windows 2000 start menu if you wanted to. They always offered that gradual approach. And by the way, they have their rationale for it. I mean, Microsoft has data that we're only now getting privy to showing that this transition to devices from PCs is happening much more rapidly than anyone would have thought a couple of years ago, and that they knew they had to get in this. But it's so unlike them to do what they did. And I think Windows 8.1 shows you maybe what a less radical version of that looks like. Because Windows 8.1, I think, is a more profound release than people realize. And what I mean by that is that for people who have traditional PCs, you can't completely get rid of Metro, but you can really hide it for the most part. And I think that's important to those
Oh,
people.
I think it's totally important, and I've been saying this for a couple of weeks now. I got 8.1 on this Lenovo that I have next to me. I was using that Lenovo throughout the Apple event, and
Yeah.
it's running 8.1. I would have never done it with 8. And just knowing that I could right-click on that start button and get the control panel and get to this and get to that, it really. And listen, I'm telling you, 70% of it is psychological. The fact that I know it's there makes it
right.
easy for me, but the fact that it's making it easy for me goes a long way because now my perception of this product has changed. And I tell people, like, I like 8.1.
By the way, there are other issues. I mean,
sure.
I can't show you this, but on my desktop screen here, it's with the start menu, like the start screen rather. I mean, all of the start screen tiles are kind of jammed up against the left of the screen because this thing doesn't intelligently lay out and work very well. And I think there are also concerns around the notion that, Metro seems to work very well within the confines of like a phone type screen for whatever reason and has a really beautiful display. But when you push it out to these bigger screen devices, sometimes it doesn't quite work as well.
Like, and, I'm wondering, what do people think, like, on these gigantic touch screens, like the iMac, clones? Like, what are people thinking of Metro on those devices? We don't really hear much about that. Because I know someone that just bought one.
I don't think there's a lot of call for touch on those devices. I think that's the problem. So, you can play with Fresh Paint for a couple of minutes, but I mean, I don't think people are going to sit there with their hands on the screen, Minority Report style, and triage email. Like, I don't really see a big case for that. Yeah. I don't know. I think that I really do feel like this kind of hybrid PC thing is the future volume market for the PC, in the same way that the Ultrabook kind of stepped up, and now we hit the next logical version of that where you can pop the screen off, and, there's no reason these devices can't look just like Ultrabooks, but then the screen comes on.
But I mean, in its current formation, I don't know, but if it kind of evolves into this smarter thing, I mean, you've said it. Why can't these devices? You take the screen off and you're in Metro, and that's it. You don't have desktop. You dock, and now you're in desktop.
Well, it's not that clear cut because if you're working in a Word document or something and you pop the screen off and that disappears, that's going to confuse people too.
I want it to disappear. I want it all.
Well, I think it will eventually. Yeah. I really do, but we're not there yet. But again, I think that people will say it. There's a cynical way to say it. This is the version of Windows Microsoft should have shipped last year. I would say when you make a platform shift this dramatic, it's okay for that thing to take 4 years instead of 3 years. So the way I would say it is, Microsoft should have released this thing this year as Windows 8 and as Windows RT. And I think things would have gone better. I don't think it solves all the problems because, obviously when you fix some problems, you're just highlighting the fact that other problems haven't been fixed. So people have their start button back and they wouldn't have been complaining about that, but they would have been complaining about the fact that the start menu was gone, and they still will complain about that. And I do find it a little odd that they didn't offer that just as an option.
You mean the start menu?
Yeah.
Well, it's weird. The start button's back, but the start menu's gone, but not really, because if you right-click on that start button, it brings you like this half-assed UI'd start menu.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's just part of what used to be there. I mean, it doesn't give you the option. There are third-party utilities that will bring the start screen down into a menu, and it can look like the old start menu. It can look like the new start screen, but just be in a window. And I don't know why people get upset about this kind of thing, but I've heard this from people. In Windows 7, I can open the start menu and I can do something in there, whatever it is, search for an app, search for a document, whatever. And I don't lose the rest of the desktop. It's still there. I can still see it. And I don't know why you have to see it or how that is actually important or whatever. But, this is one of those things. And I think that, again, there's a kind of a contingent of old school people.
Yeah, this is how we've done it, and this is how we want to do it. I mean, that's what it really comes down to.
Well, I think the majority of people are actually going to be okay with this, and that the truth is most people don't run. Even if they have 5 or 6, 7 applications running at the same time, they're not paying attention to all of them. So some people may have 2 things on the screen side by side, but you can do that in Windows 8.1 with Metro apps. It's fine. It works fine. And so these transitions are hard. That's all. I mean, I think that we're going to get there, but I think these new Surface devices are, as expected, they bring forward the hardware in ways that are not surprising. And they're using the superior version of the software, which, again, is as it should be, and hopefully that makes a big difference.
Yeah. I have a couple questions for you, but before we go on with this, I want to talk about a sponsor. If I can pull this up. Oh, there we go. And that's Shutterstock. The show is brought to you by Shutterstock with over 28 million high-quality stock photos, illustrations, vectors, and video clips. Shutterstock helps you take your creative project to the next level. And here's a great deal for everybody. They're offering 25% off on a new account by going to Shutterstock.com and using offer code WhatTheTech9. So who uses Shutterstock? If you are creating a magazine, if you're creating a website, we use it all the time for stock images. Josh Coleman, which just did the Apple event with me prior to this, he uses Shutterstock for almost every website that he's creating. Every time he has to create some sort of presentation, also he's using it. And we're using it for the stock videos, which is phenomenal. And the fact that they have 28 million images and video clips, you know that there's something for you over there. And if they don't have it, guess what? They're adding 10,000 images per day, so they're probably going to have it. You could download up to 25 images a day with a standard subscription. So if you download 1, 2, 3, and it's not what you want, guess what? You can still continue downloading it, which is great. You get 25% off on a new account by going to Shutterstock.com and using offer code WhatTheTech9. I want to thank Shutterstock for supporting What the Tech. With a lot of this app stuff happening, Paul, how have you gotten any wind on what's happening with the developers, and if Microsoft, like, if they're happy with the way that the development for these Metro apps is going, or they're totally disappointed? Like, I'm curious on what their perception of what's happening is.
So internally, Microsoft is very disappointed in how that has gone. They will never say that publicly. I think it's notable that, and I feel bad about this actually. There was a story recently, like yesterday, about some changes in the structure of the Windows group at Microsoft. And one of the guys who got kind of bumped aside is Antoine LeBlanc, who was a very good and public face to the developer stuff. I thought he did a great job, but me thinking that doesn't mean anything because obviously, the developer thing hasn't really worked out. So he's been kind of bumped aside. And now the guy who runs the Windows, I should say the OS development part of Microsoft, who came from Windows Phone, is putting his own people in place instead. Now, that should be a little nerve-wracking because that stuff hasn't exactly gone well either. Yeah. But on the other hand, given that it's been in market a little bit longer, the Windows Phone stuff from a developer perspective is kind of a better story. There are a lot more apps, including a bunch of games that I just think are silly not to have on Windows 8 and RT. They're only available on Windows Phone. So,
I mean, do you think there's going to be some sort of transparency between the two, and kind of they're going to share apps?
Yeah, they'll merge them. Yeah,
they kind of have to, right?
So they've done it half-assedly so far. There's the APIs for Windows 8 are kind of called like WinRT, Windows Runtime. The one for Windows Phone is called WinPRT, like Windows Phone Runtime. They're not super they're not super subsets of each other or anything like that. They're just some of it's the same, some of it isn't. And I think that what they need to do is have some kind of core WinRT set of APIs that is common across platforms. And then you can have one for Windows, you can have one for phone, and then you can have one for Xbox One, and that those things all build on the core that will be common across all of them. And so we'll see how that happens. I mean, this is just speculation on my part, but now that they've broken off the engineering for Windows into kind of a separate group, and they are in fact in charge of all the stuff I just said, they could make that happen, and I hope they do. I hope they do.
It's so disappointing, but we say it every week. I wish more people use this, and I wish they did this.
Yeah. Oh, hey, hold on one second.
Yeah.
I have to let my cat out of my office.
Oh, let's see this. Let's see this happen.
Sorry.
Paul is about to let his cat out of the office. There he goes, standing up. I didn't know Paul had a cat. I did not think you were a cat person.
Sorry, cat emergency.
I had no idea you were a cat person.
We own cats. I tolerate them. They barely tolerate me.
Are they Mac users or are they Windows PC?
Yeah. No.
Google also released some information on the next version of Android, and that's KitKat. Mm-hmm. We didn't touch on it last week, but interesting that they're releasing information on it now, and they now to me feel like the older operating system, and it's crazy because last year we were saying how the iPhone is the one that's looking old. iOS looks kind of old and looks tired, but now it's kind of Android because Windows Phone is absolutely beautiful. And they now have this weird thing, but I guess it doesn't matter to them because they've already taken over the entire market. When you have, X amount of shares in this market, you really don't need to evolve as fast. And they're kind of doing they're doing the Apple thing.
Well, I mean, I think what they need to work on, although, so far it hasn't proven to be a huge issue, but it is an issue from time to time, is getting more people and more devices on the most recent version of the software. I think that's that kind of fragmentation thing that people talk about is, an issue, right? I mean, it's just something that I think it's one of those things I think they kind of need to look at.
My biggest problem is that still applications are not consistent across the board on Android, which I don't think anybody else has that issue. My experience using an application on Android, one app on Android, is going to be totally different than the other one. I can't use Google Hangouts on my Android phone. It crashes every time.
Yeah.
I can't, it doesn't work. And that's a problem.
I'd like to know what the stupidity is that prevents someone on a mini tablet like a Nexus 7 from installing an app that's designed for a smartphone. Like, why wouldn't that just work?
No, you could do that.
No, there are versions of apps that prevent that.
Oh, really?
For example, Xbox Music is one. Yeah.
Oh, so so Xbox Music is now on Android.
Office Mobile for iPad, same thing.
So what happens when you try to install it? It says no, it's not supported on the device.
Well, you don't see it in the store. I mean, for one thing.
Oh, you don't see it.
And if you do it from the web, it doesn't come up in the list of compatible devices.
That is interesting. I had no idea it does that.
Yeah, it's not good.
No. Any reason why they released Xbox Music for Android? I mean, that was an interesting move.
Any reason?
Yeah, like.
Well, they said they were going to do this last year. I mean, Microsoft, they don't get a lot of credit for this. And by the way, this is something that both Google and Apple don't do for the most part. Is they understand that the world is heterogeneous, and they sort of understand that because it happened to them before inside of corporations, but it's obviously happening to them out in the real world as well. And so, they're not just Windows. They have these other platforms, Office. They have the online services like Outlook.com, SkyDrive, OneNote, Office 365 for businesses, and Xbox Music now in video. And so last year when they launched Xbox Music as a replacement for Zune, they said that sometime in 2013 they would release clients for iOS and Android. And so it took a while, but in the meantime, they've improved the version for Windows 8 and Windows RT, and of course, actually, they've even improved the version for Windows Phone, and that kind of thing doesn't happen very often, but it has in fact happened. So, I just think this is about getting that stuff everywhere. They want to have smart glass on all of the platforms. The idea being that no matter what device you use, you can access these other services that they have, and I think it's the right approach in today's world. I mean, it's not Windows anymore.
No, I mean. I guess it makes sense. I was just curious on what percentage of people that don't have a Windows phone are using Xbox Music.
0. The percentage is 0. So, I mean, and by the way, I don't think that many people are using it anyway, but they also have a client for the web that works on the Mac. It works on any PC. It's actually pretty nice. It looks almost exactly like the Windows 8 client. And I think the story there is going to get really good over time. And I really do, again, I approach the world from kind of a Windows-centric viewpoint, but I don't mean that just professionally. Like, I prefer this stuff personally. And so to me, as the Xbox Music Pass and Xbox Music are a no-brainer. But those things have gotten better over time. And so, for example, last year they had a special deal where if you bought a new Windows 8 or Windows RT PC, or you bought bought Windows 8 separately, that you would get, I think it was 6 months of free unlimited streaming, and then after that it was kind of a meter thing. That deal is now available on the web to anybody. So someone with a Mac could start using Xbox Music and have free streaming of the entire catalog. They don't get a lot of credit for this kind of thing.
Yeah. Before we wrap it up, I want to get your opinion on that smartwatch that Samsung released.
Right.
I actually was
the less than smartwatch.
When they released it, I actually was thinking, I'm like, I'm really dying to know what Paul's opinion on this is. At this moment, at this release of this smartwatch, what is he thinking? It's useless, right? I mean, it's a dumb thing.
Yeah,
$400. $400.
I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that over time, this kind of thing is going to make sense. I think they need to be less expensive. I think that there are going to be cases for people that don't want to pull a phone out of their pocket, but it basically acts as kind of a remote processor and a remote collection point for data, and that they can, get that kind of at a glance kind of information about stuff. I do think there's a. I do think there's a market.
No,
for this
there
kind
is, but not, I mean, $120, $199 maybe.
It's got to be priced like an accessory. Yep.
It's as expensive as a phone. I mean, that's really
that's crazy.
That's a crazy part. You're spending $400, and then you're gonna spend another $400 for the phone. So now you're at I think they had like a deal where you get it for like $649 if you buy one, you get the other one. But regardless, it's insane to me that they put this thing out. It's there's nothing on it. I mean, what did they say? 70 apps, okay, but. What are you doing? I was watching CNN and the girl's trying to justify it on CNN. She's like, "Look, you could use it has a 4-megapixel camera. Look," and she's like, "I'm like, who's gonna do that? Who's gonna you have a camera already? You have a really good camera in your pocket. Who's gonna say forget about the phone that has a 14-megapixel camera? I'm gonna use my wristwatch. I'm gonna take a picture."
So I don't think people are gonna use it for that, but. There's kind of a bad social thing that occurs today where people are sitting at a table and they're all staring at their phones, and maybe as we mature a little bit in our use of technology, that one of the things that can happen is there's information that is important. If my daughter sends me a text message because something has happened at school and I need to be there, or a phone call comes in and I want to see who it is, or a sports score has changed and I want to keep up on my favorite team or whatever, that there are times when however they do it, your wrist gets buzzed with the notification, you look down, and then you just keep going rather than plowing your face into a phone and ignoring the people at the table who you're with. So I think there's a place for this stuff, but it's early days, and I think it will get better over time. And
I think what a lot of people also the problem was that a lot of people were expecting those renderings of that curved glass, and they had this beautiful example on all these Android sites saying this is what it's going to look like. Here are some renderings. And then
how come Apple's not getting dinged for not announcing a watch?
Yeah. I mean, maybe they're smart. Maybe they know that it can't be done right now.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's why they're not releasing it, because it doesn't make sense. Samsung just wants to be first to them. Isn't it amazing that the reason why Samsung is releasing that watch is due to exclusively on speculation that Apple will be releasing one? That is the only reason why they're making one and putting it out.
No, I think they understand that that's something that's going to happen. I mean, I think they might have jumped the gun a little bit releasing what they had early because of that. But I think these companies were, in fact, all separately working on this kind of stuff. Microsoft is supposedly doing this, and they came out with Spot probably 10 years ago. Their first, or their last, I should say, smartwatch effort. Remember, they also partnered with Timex in the 1990s to do the Timex Data Link watch. So I mean, this is something that companies have been working on for a while. This is the type of thing, by the way, that Apple has entered the market, late, and then done a really good job with, and in effect, reinvented that market. So.
I don't know.
You never know.
I don't want to watch. All right, Paul. I got to get out of here. It is so hot in here. I'm dying. You're speaking tonight, right?
Yep.
What are you doing?
So there is let me bring it up so I get this right. I'm going to be speaking at something called the Boston Windows 8 App Developers and IT Group. It's their 1-year anniversary. They're meeting. There are two beautiful Microsoft facilities in Cambridge. They're kind of a kitty corner away from each other. One is on Memorial Drive, and that's not where I'm going. The other one is the new Microsoft offices that are at 1 Cambridge Center. It's right off of the, one of the Orange Line stops in Cambridge, and I believe it is a free event. And given the audience, I assume they are Windows 8 app developers. So I've got some information for them that I hope will be valuable. Hopefully, will be fun. I usually do these kind of dry presentations, so I tried to have fun with this one. So hopefully this one's pretty good.
And on the 23rd, you're going to be here in New York.
Yes, I am.
Are we doing a meetup?
Yeah, I think so. In fact, let me look at that. I think Darren just set that up.
Did he?
Yeah.
Oh, where? What are we
I
doing?
think at 5. Yeah, it looks like 5 p.m. Lansdowne. Lansdowne
Lands, Lands,
Lansdowne Road
in New York
Hell's Kitchen,
City.
New York. Lansdowne Road.
How far is this from Penn Station? Darren, what are you doing to me? Where are we going?
We've got the back room. It's at 599 10th Avenue.
Oh, it's on the west side.
Well, that's near Penn
Darren.
Station.
Huh?
It's near Penn Station.
Yeah, no, it's not bad. It's actually pretty close. 30. What is it? It's Penn Station to now. Sorry, guys, I'm gonna do this now on the air, so it doesn't make sense. But yeah, no, it's pretty close. No, okay, Darren, never mind. I thought it was like downtown, all the way like downtown and to the west side. It's fine. All right, I'll deal with it. So 5 p.m. we'll have a big meetup. I will. Last time, I'm sorry, I didn't disappoint. I disappointed everybody. They thought I'd be like belligerent drunk, and people kept messaging me like
at the last meetup.
Yeah, and then people were like, I was so surprised how controlled you are. Like you have self control. Like you're not as big of a
I heard
drunk.
You were
as
a serious alcoholic. What's up?
That's exactly what people were saying. I'm like, I'm sorry, I wasn't in the mood to drink that much.
What was the last one? I don't even remember which one it was.
It was Windows Phone 8.
Was that really?
Yeah.
That was the last time?
The last meetup, yeah, Windows Phone 8.
Huh.
Or was it? No. It was Surface. Surface.
That was a long time ago. You sure? Surface Pro?
No, Surface RT.
That was a long time ago. We haven't done a meetup since then in New York.
No, what?
Sure?
Yeah, I'm almost positive. Yeah, it was Surface RT. Windows 8 Surface RT.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's been a while. But I'll be there, and I promise I'll get drunk. I promise you. You go to our website, gfqnetwork.com. Remember, guys, help us out. Subscribe to us. Subscribe to the show on a number of services, wherever podcasts are available. Windows Phone, iPhone, iPad, whatever service you use as an app, and you can subscribe to us. I will be drinking Budweiser. Yes. Chat room is saying, am I going to be drinking Budweiser? I will be drinking Budweiser. Trashy beer all day long.
It's disappointing.
I'm sorry. You can follow Paul on Twitter, @TheRot. I'm at Andrew Zarian on Twitter. You can follow me there, at GFQ Network on Twitter. Also, guys, if you want to help us out, it's a big help when you guys use our Amazon affiliate link. You go to gfq.co/Amazon, and that's our Amazon link. We got a tiny percentage from the purchase, so keep buying stuff. And I guess we'll see you next week. Good night, everybody.